Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Tactical Tuesday. We are excited for tonight. As always, we have some amazing guests that are here to share some of their secrets with you. Secrets. And they're not actual secrets because there's no secrets. Anything we want to research, we can find out these days, right? But doing it ourselves and going through the process is a totally different experience. So sometimes there's these little tips and tricks, these little tweaks that we have to make in our investing. And this is what our guests are here to share with us tonight. So our guests are all Ignited members. Ignited is our mentorship program. They are rocking and rolling on the scene of real estate. That you've probably met them or seen them before, seen their names around. They're everywhere. And they are using real estate or RSPs in a really kind of interesting way. So, really interestingly, 30% more people, this survey just came out, 30% more people this year, so in 2023, plan to contribute to their RSPs than they did in 2022, 30% more. Why is that? You know why? Because there's fear out there. And when people are fearful, they go back to what they know works, which is standard RRSPs. Now, do they work from an investment point of view? Do we know that there's better places to put your money? For sure. Is there a place for RRSPs? Absolutely. But listen, if 30% more people are putting money into their RRSPs this year, then we've got a win-win situation, a win-win scenario sitting, waiting for us. And here's what it is. We, as creative real estate investors, can use those RSPs. So how does that work? And what can we do with them? Now, we're going to work backwards. This is a two-part series. So part one is tonight. We're going to work backwards. So we're going to talk about all the cool stuff, because if you're like me, when I'm learning an instrument, I want to be able to do all the fun stuff first and then learn the intricate, boring details. So tonight is the fun stuff. And we're going to learn what can you do with these kinds of things. And then next week, we have a guest host, Colin Ernst. He's going to come on and go through the intricate details. He's so systemized and logical. He's going to go through how do we actually do this so that we can actually use it in our investing. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on two of our guests. We have 4 guests for you tonight, guys. And I'm going to, well, you know what, actually, I might just bring y'all on right now. I think I will, because John and Camilla are on one screen, it actually works for us to have you all on at once. So I'm going to bring you guys all on right now. Where are you, John and Camilla? There you are. Awesome. Okay, you guys are frozen. So maybe see if there's a hot spot or something you can grab. But in the meantime, I'm going to introduce you. You guys probably know Sylvie Lalancette and Julie Conrad, the rock stars in Ottawa. So how's it going, guys?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are so cute. Okay, so you guys have been investing for a decent amount of time. You did some, stuff over the last few years. You kind of were rolling. You really, though, stepped up a couple of years ago. Tell me about the twins. Tell me about the first one, then tell me how you got the second one. And then we're going to talk about how you have creatively used RSPs to buy these twins, renovate these twins, and now looking at some beautiful ARV for these twins. So explain to everyone listening what the twins are, if you would.
Sure. So the twins are 2 purpose-built 8-plex rental units in Ottawa. They're side by side. We first bought the first building in 2021. As soon as we started buying that one, we said, okay, we need to look at the next one. So it took us about a year to buy the second. An interesting seller, interesting stories. We can't get into all of that tonight, but at the same time, 2 very solid buildings that needed to be revamped.
Okay, so we're talking Ottawa. So we're talking in a market that had already been, heated. A lot of it in migration had been already started there, and immigration. And you're talking about you bought an 8-suiter building, and then you found next door. You were like, I wonder about that one, and you were able to create relationships. Just give the Coles notes, create relationships enough in the neighborhood and with the community that you were able to then buy that other building side by side. So now you have 2 8-plexes, 16 suites side by side that you are revamping to make better, and then refinancing.
Yeah. So it's a full renovation for both buildings, but the situations were a little bit different. The first building was tenanted when we purchased it. So we did have to go through the whole process of applying for permits and whatnot, and doing or issuing N13s so that we could vacate the building basically and actually start the renovations. Second building, we were lucky, fully vacant, in dire need of renovations as well. So it just happened that it was a good opportunity. And a year later, so we already knew that we could do it.
Yeah, and you guys were so diligent in, figuring all this stuff out and making sure. And I mean, I loved being part of the process because I felt like I was buying a second baby when I was with you guys through the whole process of figuring it out. And just watching your diligence was just like super awesome. So I know that RSPs played a really cool part in your whole journey with these 16, we're just going to call it 16 suites, okay? So 16 suites, buying them, renovating, all that kind of stuff. Now, Julie, you had talked about how there's, 2 different ways that you used RSPs, 2 very specifically different. And guys, for those of you that are listening and kind of going, RSPs seems like this crazy different world. It's a lot simpler than you would think. And Julie, what was one of the ways that you used RSPs to finagle with all of this real estate?
Yes, so RRSPs are a wonderful tool to. The first strategy that we used it for was to secure the down payment for the purchase of our initial building. And it's a wonderful tool. And as you said earlier, Tiffany, you like creating win-wins. Well, that's one of our favorite things to do, is to create win-wins. And I find using RSP funds is a win-win in many ways. From a lender perspective, so we're using someone's money that's in an RSP. And I don't know if you know, but some of my friends, I'll say, well, where are you investing? They say, in RSPs. And I say, well, okay, but how are you investing your money that's in the RSP, which is just the vehicle, right? And they have no idea. So this is a great opportunity where we can use your RSP funds, pay you anywhere between 6 and 10% is the going rate in interest, and your funds are guaranteed against an asset that's making money, right? So it's really exciting from a lender's perspective, where you can obtain funds at the 6 to 10% range, and not the private lend rates that are out there right now at 16 and 18%. And so it's great from a lending perspective that way, and it's great for the person who's lending out their funds, because they get their funds growing and at a good rate, and it's secured against brick and mortar.
Okay.
So I think it's a great strategy.
Absolutely. So for those of you that have been thinking about, and who out there, put it in the comments for me, put a thumbs up or a number 1, whatever you're comfortable with, who has been thinking about using RSPs for the first time, and really you're not sure. It can be used because you've heard all these great success stories, but you're really not sure how to use it, but you want to. And I'll tell you from experience that registered funds are among some of the easiest funds to capital raise with. And Julie, we were talking about this earlier. Remember, you mentioned it, and I loved how you put it. So why is it that RSP funds are some of the easiest funds to capital raise with?
Right. Well, it's essentially guaranteed. It's secured. That's the first question. Are when we speak to potential investors, first question they all ask is it secured? And it's really wonderful in this day and age to be able to secure funds against a solid asset. It's tangible, right? It's income generating. It's also income tax deferred. Therefore, all the money you're making off of this RSP is deferred to later when you retire, or when you so choose to withdraw your RSP funds. So, and if you're using, of course, we're talking RSPs, but any type of registered funds works similarly, right? You could use a TFSA or a LIRA. Those
Yeah.
are all advantages to using registered funds for your investing purposes, as opposed to just using cash.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned too that there's like less attachment to it. So, we know when we have our own RSPs, but also when we're looking at our, friends and family all around us that are there, that money has been put aside, and in their brains, that's been put away till they're 65.
Right.
Exactly.
And so it's not something that they're looking for, counting on, thinking about for today. And for that reason, there's no emotional attachment. So guys, for those of you that have been thinking about using RSP funds, and there's lots of you that commented, thank you for the comments, guys, in the chat. For those of you that have been thinking about it, just know that RSPs is a really nice place to start. It seems complicated, but I can tell you right now, it is not. It's much easier than you think. It's also easier to find those yeses. So it's a good place to start. So you mentioned, Julie, that you use it as a down payment. So that's our number one way that we're going to talk about tonight, as a down payment. Now, how does that work, Julie? Can it be the full down payment? Sorry, I'm going to regress 1 second. Julie mentioned that it does, because it's registered funds, the government mandates certain things. And because the government requires certain things of us as investors and as whoever's administering the real estate for us, because there's that mandate, well, the government says certain things have to comply, which one of them is it has to be secured. Secured means it has to be put against title, meaning a lien, or maybe it has to be placed. So it's quite a secure investment. So Julie, talking about it being a secured investment, you used it in one way on this deal as a down payment. How did you do it? What were the parameters surrounding it? Or Julie or Sylvia, whichever one.
I'll let Sylvie take this one.
Okay, so if you're wanting to use it as a down payment on your property, there's two different things. You have to be careful, because if you're putting a mortgage on a building or any purchase, the first lender needs to be aware, or needs to be conscious that your down payment might be coming from a second mortgage on the same property. So in the case of our twins, the first RRSP lend that we went through, it was actually not secured on the building, for the simple reason that it needed to be separated, because we were going after a construction mortgage on the building, which would have brought us above our loan to value, or above the purchase price value of the building. So in that context, we secured the RSP funds on our principal residence.
Okay.
Because we
Let's
had
stop there.
Exactly, because we had
This
lots
is
of room.
cool, right? This is cool, guys. So lots of times, so let's talk about a $500,000 property, okay? And it's got a mortgage already of $400,000 on it, let's say. And we want to use RSP funds to tap into that extra 100,000 so that we don't have money in the deal, or maybe even more for renovating. So the RSPs can be used for that $100,000 gap, okay? That's the down payment gap. So that's what Julie and Sylvie and their team have done on this 8-suiter building. But here's the problem. Again, we mentioned that RSPs have to be secured. They have to be leaned against property, which means the property has to have enough room in it, equity in it, to be able to support that. Yeah. Now, in this case, when their 8-suiter didn't, you guys got creative. So how did you get creative? You said instead of putting a lien and RSP funds as a second on the eightplex, you put them where?
So we put them on our principal residence because we had equity in the building in our home that could support that mortgage and more. So in that context, it was the easiest and the, well, to be honest, the simplest, and at the same time, it made sense for our investors to have their funds secured against an existing. So our principal residence obviously being important to us, so it wasn't going to be going anywhere.
Skin in the game. Skin in the game is what they call it, right?
That's it. Skin in the game. So guys, as an investor, so let's say you had RSPs and you were going to put them as a second mortgage, either way. Now, would you prefer to put them as a second mortgage on a building that's an investment where there's no emotion whatsoever? Or would you prefer to, and put that in the comments, guys, I'm talking to you as an audience. So, or would you prefer to put that on someone's primary residence where they, raised their kids and have good memories? Would you think that there's any more security? And we can think about it from a bank's perspective. Do they think there's more security? And certainly we're smart investors. We run our numbers. So either way, we're secure. However, wouldn't it be nice to put it on someone's personal residence? So that's your number one tip, guys. And yeah, absolutely. Brilliant idea. So number one tip tonight is you can use RSPs on your principal residence. You pull out that money and then you invest. So there's a lien on your principal residence and you're paying interest on this money. But then you use that money, in this case, in case number one with Sylvie and Julie, they used it as down payment. Now, that's case study scenario number one. Scenario number two, guys, what else did you do? You used RSPs for your 16 units in another way as well.
So on the second building, our intention was not to go into a lender to get a construction mortgage, but was to just get a mortgage, a first mortgage to purchase the property. And so in that context, we didn't use it necessarily for the down payment because we had raised private funds for the down payment. But we did basically, after we had purchased, a few months later, we basically converted the private lending money for the down payment to RSPs so that cash basically became our construction money.
Nice.
So in that context, it's more timing and where is it secured. So in this second instance, it is actually secured on the building that we purchased. It just didn't happen at the time of purchase. It happened a few months later.
And so it's secured on the same building or on the first building?
No, it's secured on the building that we were buying.
Oh,
The second.
Okay.
On the second twin, yeah. So basically, it allowed us to bring that loan to value on mortgage. So we had a first mortgage, and then we brought in the RRSP mortgage right behind it, all the way to 100% or pretty close.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So guys, scenario number two for tonight is they used RSPs as a second mortgage, and those funds were then used to renovate the place. So tell me how, as investors, guys, not as lenders, but as investors, how do you pay back your lenders who gave you their RSPs, and how does that work?
So,
I could take
that
that one.
You can go for this one.
So essentially, this is we remember that we bought the property for a certain price. We put in X amount of dollars to renovate, and then there's an ARV, an after repair value, that is appraised after all the buildings have been beautified, I call it. And so that ARV, after repair value, is at a much higher level, and we are able to repay all of our private lenders and our RSP lenders, with the difference between what the value, the building is valued today. We can pay back all of our renovation costs, all of our initial mortgages, etc. And so that's essentially how it's done. Is I like to take simple numbers as examples. If you buy the building for $100,000 and you put in $50,000 in renovations, but now your building is worth $300,000, right? So you're paying back your $100,000 plus your $50,000 that you may have gotten in RSP lenders, and the difference is what you're left with, equity in the deal.
Yeah,
So
perfectly
that's how
said.
we're gonna pay them back. Yeah.
Go ahead,
But
Sonia.
but in the meantime, like for carrying costs, so basically we've had two scenarios. So for example, the first mortgage that's been put onto our personal residence, it's being paid back on a monthly basis at 8% through an administrator in Ontario. We have administrators now, and that's being paid on a monthly basis. But it's interest only, so we're not paying back the principal, just the interest. In the second scenario, we structured it a bit differently, where the government, CRA requires, and Olympia, of course, requires that there be a minimum interest paid to each account on an annual basis. So 2.5% is the minimum. So in that second scenario, we're paying the 2.5%, and the balance of the 8% interest rate that we're providing our lenders is going to be paid at the back end in a balloon payment as we're repaying the principal.
Okay, so guys, just so that we understand this, what Sylvie's saying is, again, there's been a mandate. The institution, the trustee, the government, whatever, sometimes mandates different things. In this case, the government wanted it, and then the institution put it in place, was that there has to be a minimum paid. So in this case, 2.5% has to be paid every year. However, there's 2.5% has to be paid, but here they're charging paying 8% interest. So there's that 5.5% difference, where that's a large chunk of cash when you don't have rents coming in quite yet.
Right.
So what these guys did brilliantly is they took that 5.5% and said, we'll pay you the government mandated 2.5%, which quite frankly is better than what most people get out of their RSP anyway. So 2.5%, we'll put that down. We'll pay you that monthly, annually, so that you get your annual interest rate. But for the remaining 5.5%, because we're not getting any rents yet, would you mind waiting for that 5.5% until we have refinanced the building? And this is all done up legally, guys, through lawyers, through trustees, through mortgage documents. You're just like the bank. And the remainder gets paid out. Now, can you imagine 5.5% interest that can be paid out in a year instead of paid out every single month? What a difference. So again, another learning from how you guys brilliantly staggered this is do the minimums, or do whatever minimum your lender is going to require of you or need from you. Sometimes there's a little bit of fear and they might want a little bit more, but you can then defer by balloon paymenting the remainder. When you do a refinance or when you sell, the rest will be due.
Yeah. And what we've noticed, Tiffany, is that with the strategy of using RRSP or registered funds, is that people, as you said earlier, aren't attached to it. They can't do anything with it. So they don't mind, waiting for the balloon payment at the end, because whether you get the money now or get the money later, it's no different for them, but it's a huge difference for us, which is why that strategy is a great one.
Okay, and I'm going to reiterate that for everyone to really hear clearly what Julie just said. Your lenders who are lending you their RSPs, remember, they've put it off until they're 65. In their brains, it's not touchable, and they're not touching it. So they don't care whether they get that extra. They want 8%. That's what they want, 8% per year. They don't care if they're getting that every single month, or if they're getting it in a year, or maybe 2 years, or we've done 5-year balloon payments. So they don't care, because they're not going to be using that money anyway. Again, it's put away. So one more reason why RSPs can be such a powerful tool for us. And guys, in case you missed it at the beginning, 30%, it's said to, the Globe and Mail had this survey, and they said 30% more people this year in 2023 are planning to put money into their RSPs. That's never mind the billions of dollars that are already sitting there waiting to be used that people aren't happy with. So many opportunities, guys, and we're talking about some creative ways that we can use these. So just to be clear, Crystal's saying you put the RSP funds on. So in the first scenario, you put the RSPs on your primary residence, took the equity out in cash, used the cash as a down payment on one of the twins.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am. Perfect. We've used that scenario ourselves as well. We've put RSPs on our primary in order to buy other investment properties as well. It's fantastic. And Japita brings out a really good point. Make sure that it's still cash flowing. So you don't want to over leverage yourself, right? You want to run the numbers on these, making sure that you're not going to, get yourself underwater either on a monthly basis or, end up putting all this high interest debt. And then after you don't get the after repaired value that you're looking for and can't finance where you need to. So yeah, good point.
And I'll just say, shameless plug for Ottawa in that respect is, when you invest in great markets like, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver, Edmonton, places that are on, that hold their values and where people are attracted, like we've benefited in the last couple of years, like the market. Yes, our expenses have gone up with construction fees, but at the same time, the interest rate rise has made it very difficult for first-time buyers to get into the market, which is making our 3-bedroom apartment suites look like beautiful future homes for some young families.
Right.
So, and the rents have, because there's more demand, there's the rents are rising, and the ARV, so the after repair value is exponentially rising, and I think that's in large part based on the market. So I mentioned a few. There's many more out there that are really great markets, but it's important. It's important when we say look at your numbers and the market credentials or demographics. It's super important because it will bring you along your strategy and will help as you're pivoting as times are changing. Things just kind of fall into place.
Yeah, for sure. Love it. I just have to take a pause. I don't know what you said, Veldin, but Veldin is just a troublemaker. And the fact that the people are even saying, I'm like, I can't see which is his name because it's coming up as Facebook user, but I can just imagine there's trouble somewhere brewing. So, and Earshad, yes, the reason why they call them the twins is because they're two side-by-side, 2 8-suite buildings in Ottawa side by side, so 16 units altogether. And since they're 2 babies, they call them the twins. So all right, so okay guys, so what happens now? So you've put RSPs on your primary to purchase the first building. You then put RSPs on the second building as a second in order to finance the renovation costs. Where are you at with your project? What's going on now? How do we see the ARV, and what's happening?
So on the first building, construction has taken a bit longer. So as Julie mentioned, some of our costs have gone up, but the ARV has significantly gone up. So in the space of about a year, the value of the building has actually increased by $1 million. So in that context, so the rent situation, we all see it. Rents are going up, and housing in Ottawa is still at an all-time low. There's still a high demand for housing, but yet people can't get into purchasing a home, so they're going to be renting. And then we have the migration issue. Immigration is going up in Ottawa, going up pretty much across the country, but Ottawa is a very, very good market. Most people would like to move to Ottawa or Toronto or Montreal, the big centers.
Yeah. So when immigration, So let's talk about the difference between really quickly between in-migration and immigration. So in-migration means that people are moving from other provinces, and they're generally typically starting in houses, smaller-ish houses, whereas immigration, which Ottawa is seeing a ton of, is people from other countries, and they're generally starting in the starter condos, townhomes, apartments. So the fact that you guys are in these apartments, suites, yeah, like the influx is coming, and that's based, fully on rents going up.
And there's a bit of immigration in the sense that you remember during COVID when everybody was getting out of the city, buying in the country. Well, guess what? Everybody's coming back into the city.
Oh, really?
And unfortunately, they've priced themselves out of the market by having done that.
Yeah.
So they too are in a position where they have to actually potentially consider a rental rather than a purchase. So it's a bit of both, and because our buildings are literally 5 minutes away from Parliament Hill, perfect neighborhood, a gentrified neighborhood, basically revamping right now. There's towers going up everywhere, but they're not ready yet, and they're not going to be available for rent this year. So we're going to be there first.
Awesome. So what's the next phase?
I just wanted to pick up on when Sylvie said, costs have gone up a little. And remember when Sylvie said earlier on our second building, we had raised part one. So what we did was we thought that we would be strategic in our raise for the construction funds. And rather than raise all of the $1 million that we needed to renovate this building up front, we thought, let's raise part of it up front and in a phase one. And that's where we used part of some of the RRSPs and funds. And then we said, well, when we get closer to midpoint, we'll start a second raise, which is where we're at now, right? So that we're not paying. We've been in the project now for 1 year on the second building, and it enables us to save on carrying costs by doing it this way in a two-phased approach, right?
Okay, so let's again break that down a little bit. So if you had borrowed the RSP money a year ago that you wouldn't be spending until today, you will have paid interest on that for that full year. So instead of doing that, you thought we'll do fundraising in two different sets. First, the stuff that we need right away. And then when we get nearer to completion, we will do another raise. That's where you are now. So you're raising RSP funds or just cash?
Mainly cash right now, but we're also looking at other opportunities and where we want to probably pool RSP funds for the next purchase. So that's another project. But right now on these projects, we're looking at mostly cash because we're in the back end stretch, as we call it. We're advancing. All the demo is done. All of the sort of the main structural stuff is completed. So now we're looking at the main systems like your HVAC, your electrical, and then drywall and etc. going forward. So it's the fun part now.
Right. Okay. So, and because you're at that end stretch, then so that would be a quicker payback for these RSP or these investors as well.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, so you were going back to the RSP. So on the first building, we had the RSP mortgage against our house. We've actually had to, because of our extended timelines and costs, we've actually had to go back to our investors and say, okay, do you mind keeping the RSP mortgage going for another year? So we've got that one secured for another year. All of our investors basically in 5 minutes said yes. So it was an easy thing. And our lawyer and our mortgage administrator, basically they're just flipping a switch, one document, everybody signs it, and then the mortgage is extended.
Okay, and really quickly, in Ontario, things have changed. We now have to use a mortgage administrator for RSPs. Tell me a little bit about that. What has changed? How has that made a difference? Because you guys were doing this before that happened. So what does that mean for us as investors in Ontario and the other provinces that it's going to be coming to for sure if it's not already there?
So effectively, when a few events happened in the real estate world,
Fraud.
The government and Olympia Trust basically decided that they wanted to introduce a second or sort of a middleman for us investors or real estate professionals to access the RRSP mortgage funds. So a mortgage administrator is now in the middle, basically making sure that one, the investors, the RSP holders are being informed properly and are very aware of how the funds are being secured, how they're going to be used, and what the terms are, so that it protects the RSP holders. And at the same time, makes it sort of easier on the borrowers. So in other words, we're not filling all the forms and whatnot, they are. So we find our investors and they handle the process, basically.
So that's what I was going to say. So as much as, now we're paying them, which I mean, we pay people to do good work. That's what we want to be paid. So we pay others. They now do the work for you. So would you say it's become easier or harder since this mortgage administrator middleman has been mandated to be involved?
So I would say that it's more expensive, but not harder. Definitely easier in the sense that they're kind of playing the middleman between us. Even though we may find our investors, then we hand them off, and they are being advised and at least managed by the administrator.
Okay.
We still have communication with our investors because we know them, and obviously we brought them into the project and we communicate with them regularly. But on the actual mortgage and the documentation, the administrator takes care of it.
The other benefit to RRSP investing, while I'm thinking about it, is we talked about more expensive legal fees, but as an investor, you don't need to worry about that because the borrower takes care of all of those expenses on your behalf. So not only are we making the process easier for you it's like you've got one point of contact, right, to deal with. You are also, all of your legal fees are covered by the borrower.
Okay. So if you take my RSPs and I look at the fee schedule for Olympia Trust, I'm like, holy crap, it's like $75 for this, $25 for that, $250 for that, blah, blah, blah. You're saying don't worry about it. You guys in your project, your real estate has already factored in those costs and you're going to take care of those.
Yes.
So my return, my 8% return is actually 8%, not 8% minus fees.
That's right. The only fee we don't pay is the fee to hold an Olympia account. And the reason for that is you can have, say, $1 million in your Olympia account and be investing in 10 different deals, right? So then who pays for your account in a situation like that? So that's the only fee that the investor is responsible.
And that's a pretty small fee, 20 to $50, depending on what kind of account you have. So yeah, awesome. All right, ladies, thank you for all of your information. I know that you guys have lots of information, lots of stuff to be sharing. So if people need to get a hold of you guys, I don't know how to do it so that both come up as a banner. So I'm just doing one as a ticker. I keep switching them. But guys, you can contact Julie or Sylvie or both of them if you have questions. If you have, if you're looking for a place to put your RSPs, my goodness, what a beautiful place to put it. So certainly get in touch with them, or even if you just have questions. So I'm going to leave it there. We've got John and Camilla Lindo coming up. They are going to share how they funded a deal fully, 100% fully, just with RSPs, which is really cool and kind of a interesting thing with all the changes that have happened in RSP world too. So thank you, ladies, for coming on. As always, sharing any and everything. You guys are always a wealth of information. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, I'm going to take you off and I'm going to throw, hang on. There we go. Hey, how are we?
Oh, we're doing great.
Good.
There's been some great stuff there, eh?
Right?
Yes.
So much. Do you guys have me on 2 devices right now?
Just one.
Just one?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I do hear a reverb going on.
Okay, let me try because we had to switch earlier.
Tell me guys in the comments, do you also hear this? And in the meantime, Sean and maybe you can answer this question. Are mortgage administrators required in Alberta? Or Crystal, any of you guys? that hang out in Alberta, you guys can probably, actually, I'll just ask you guys. I don't know if you guys hear feedback. Yeah, everyone hears an echo. We all hear it. Okay.
We are not hearing it.
Not hearing it?
No.
All right. Well, we're just gonna move on and pretend it's not happening. How about that?
Oh.
Okay. So if you have two devices on, just turn one off. If you don't, who knows what you can do. If one of you can go find a pair of earphones to plug into, and then you can each use one of the earphones, that would help. But in the meantime, sorry, you missed the speaker's name because of the echo. So I will just throw this up on, let me see, a banner. There we go. John and Camilla, Kamillah. These guys are rocking and rolling in Alberta. Now, you guys are Ignited members, but I will say you don't hang out too much in our community, but you are rocking and rolling in your own time, aren't you?
I come on a lot. Sometimes I just stay. I like to show the face.
Yes, right. It's just a no camera thing. But yeah, you guys are always so supportive of everyone and answering whatever questions you can, and that's awesome. So tell me, you guys were able to fund a full deal just on RSP money.
Yes, we did.
You wanna go?
So tell me about your deal.
Okay, so first, I want to say good evening to all of my fearless investors. Happy to be here. So we have been doing registered funds.
Yeah, you know what? This is better, John. Now that you're sitting forward, it's better.
Okay. So when we started real estate 7 months ago.
3 years, 7 months, yeah.
3 years, 7 months. We didn't have any money at the time. So we found a strategy where we found that registered funds can be used to buy the property, to even renovate the property. And I heard a lot of people said, no, you cannot do 100%. Well, we do 100% and more than 100%.
Okay, so let me repeat this. So there's going to be an echo, so that's just okay. So you were able to buy property with 100% or even more if you're renovating. You're able to buy properties. Now, you said you were just like us, so we started in real estate with no money too. And when you start in real estate with no money, you have to get really creative really fast, right?
Exactly.
Yes. And so far, you guys have bought quite a few properties. You've been renovating them. You've been burring them. You've been doing all kinds of stuff. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us your credibility. What have you done? So 3.5 years ago, you started no money, but since then, what have you done? And then we'll get into how you've used RSPs in that. But tell us what you've done otherwise.
Okay. So just to be brief, when we started almost 4 years ago, we could not get qualification to get a mortgage apart from, because we have our personal residence, so we already have a mortgage on that. So the bank said no more mortgage. So that's when we have to come up with a creative way of doing real estate. So our very first deal was private lending. And then the second one up till the last one that we just did is register funds. So we have been using register funds for almost 4 years to do most of our deals.
Really?
Yes. We get into it that we do the underwriting for ourselves.
Until the last year when they started.
It's just last year they changed it, the administration team.
Yeah, so what that means, guys, is, and we were the same as you guys, we did all of the mortgage documents ourselves. We changed them. We then had a lawyer to register them, that sort of thing. Sometimes we register them ourselves. But yeah, we had all of those things as well. But now, if we're going to use more than one person per property, we now have to use an administrator. So that was one of the questions that came up in the comments from our last from Julie and Sylvie. Do we need to have an administrator in Alberta? So yes. And
We have to use the administrator for more than 2 lenders now. Once you have more than one, you have to use the administrator.
yeah, you betcha. Okay, so I'm just gonna send these on. I know, guys. Sorry. Maybe there's a speaker too close to the computer, Eric says. Okay. Or use F1 key to mute the laptop speaker. There's lots of comments. Maybe try those things.
Which one?
F1. Is that better? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Eric. See, Eric's more than just a rock star investor in Ontario. He's also great with computers. Okay, thank you. That helped a lot. I'm gonna have to remember that one. Oh no, that was Irshad. Irshad, good call. Okay, this is much better. Okay, so tell me about, so the first deal that you did, yay, thank you, no echo. The first deal that you guys did was private land, full private land. That was on a single family duplex, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that was, you private lent it, you got full money, so you didn't get a mortgage at all, you just borrowed money, you paid a high interest rate, I'm sure, for that, you renovated it, you got it rented out, and then did you put a mortgage on it?
Yes, we did.
Awesome. And since then, you've been using RSPs. So tell me about your latest deal that you just did. Tell me how that's working. What kind of property is it? What are the numbers? You sent them ahead, so I already know them, but I want you to tell it. And how did it all work out with the RSPs?
So we saw this property was an underperforming property, and I don't know if everybody heard. I saw a post that I put up that I was in a helping mood one Sunday evening, helped somebody to get a free, and I said yes, free property. This is how we do it. So we found a property, it was underperforming. The seller wanted to sell it for, I think, $1.2 million at the time. But the property was very run down. There was not enough rent. The pipe was frozen. Everything want to fix on it. So we negotiate this property for $875,000.
Okay, so first off, we were asking what?
I think 1.1.
It was I think it was 1.1 or 1.2 they wanted for it at the time.
And you got it down to 8.75 or 875.
Right.
Were you not intimidated by the frozen pipes?
You know what? If you know me well, that's what I like. I like when they're rough. I like when they're dirty. I like when they're stinky. Give it to me that time. That's the way I like it.
Perfect. So you're not intimidated to take a property from ugly to beautiful.
Oh no, we are not afraid of that.
No, I don't afraid of that. Never. That's how I like it.
Awesome.
So we bought this property for $875. At the time, the value, the city assessment was $1.4 million.
Wow.
No.
City assessed at 1.4. You got it for 875. How much work did you put into it?
We put about 350,000. We put
315.
about 315 to 350. We put in it.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're using all RSP funds.
Yes, we were able to get even the renovation money from RSP funds.
Yeah. Because we were able to raise $1,060,000
RSPs
among
money.
six lenders. Yeah.
So the only way you can do it like that, Olympia Trust will allow you to take more money. You have to speak to your investors, see if they're okay with it. When the property worth more than what they're selling for, so the city assessment, it
Or
was
the appraisal.
yeah. So you have to be the city assessment or the appraiser, the appraisal, the value. Then you can take more money from Olympia Trust through your lenders.
Okay, so hit F1 for me again. Okay, is that better? No. It's back. Dang it. Is there a speaker close to the computer or no?
I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay. Oh,
So
no.
guys,
Anyways, we're just going to roll. So,
Yes.
Guys, the information is powerful, so I know it's irritating, but stick with this. What they're saying, and this is a teaching point, huge teaching point. The reason what they're saying is that the property, they bought it for $875,000, but they were able to get that much and the renovation cost in RSP funds. So how were they able to do that was what they just said, because it was assessed for 1.4. They bought it for $875,000. That spread allowed for them to finance it beyond what they bought it for.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay, so how did that all work out for you? Where are you at in that project? How did the numbers all work out?
We finished that project now. The appraisal came back. We went there. We did all the renovation, ripped the bathroom, the kitchen, the floor. We do everything. As you said, we spent a good amount of money to renovate it. We refinanced. Well, we appraised the property, came back for $1.8 million.
Okay, wait. So you bought it. You put in $330,000, so you're at 1.2-ish that you owe on it now, and you got back your financing at 1.8. And how long did that take you?
Less than a year, about 11 months.
And can I ask you know, and I know we didn't prep this, so if it puts you on the spot, just say we don't know, we'll figure it out. But how much in financing cost for those RSPs did it cost you?
I think 10%, but when you use an administration, they take.
This one wasn't for administration. I will underwrite this one.
Oh yes, this one wasn't for administration.
Yeah,
Camila will
I
underwrite this one.
So it was just before.
Yes. So as I said before, Camila used to be the person do the underwriting before. So you know what? Even our lawyer, we teach to do this. When we said it out to our lawyer first, he said, no, it cannot work. But it's one of our investors who teach us to do it. Say, listen, you guys can buy property with registered funds.
And you can underwrite
it. So I said to Camila, if this guy is lending us so much money, he's willing to invest his money and teach us how to do it with no risk. Let's try it. So we did it the first time and it worked.
Isn't it crazy when it works for the first time? Like, isn't it mind-blowing?
Yes.
Really is.
That's one of the reasons why our portfolio grew this fast, because if we did have access to these funds, there's no way we could get over 100 doors already.
Okay, so keep that for me, Camilla. 3.5 years in. And what?
So I would say if it wasn't for a registered fund, honestly, we would never, less than 4 years, have over 100 doors. It could
over
never.
100 doors in less than 4 years, and if it weren't for registered funds, you wouldn't have been able to do it.
No.
Because most time our investors, the question they ask, John, do you have another deal? They love it. You park your money, you can go into your account, you can see what's coming back every month or quarterly. We like to do it quarterly. I heard the early investors said balloon. We never done it balloon before. We like to do interest, especially if we have new investors
And they want to see.
and they want to see their money. We like to give it back monthly. The investors who always coming back with us, who's investing us from day one, who still invest in us, we try to give back their money quarterly. And most time they will ask, do you have another deal? So it pushes us. So as soon as this deal is finished, it pushes us to go find another deal, because that's the question our investors ask all the time.
Right? Yeah, it's funny how that happens. We had an investor we had a joint account with for years, and we never, did our deals. We were kind of done our buying, and he would ask us to go and buy more, and we were like, well, whatever. And finally one day he texts us and he says, hey, go look in that bank account. What's going on there? And we were like, oh no, what's happening, right? And there's $1 million in there. And he's like, can you please freaking use my money?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the way it happens. When you start creating that track record, things start rolling, right?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, guys, there's lots of love for you here. I would love to have you back on when we can figure out the sound and that sort of thing. But I know it was a little tough getting on early today, so usually we kind of get those things worked out ahead of time. But let's just figure it out for next time. Thank you for sharing. I love the inspiration that you give. I love the projects that you do. I love the town that you're working in. Yeah, like so much information you guys have to share. As you can see, there's contact information is at the bottom here. I'm just gonna leave it at that and stop talking so that my echo doesn't keep driving people crazy. Next week is part 2, guys, of RRSPs. So Colin Ernst, who has administered a ton of RRSP multiples. Again, if you're doing more than 2 per property, 2 lenders, you will need an administrator most probably. If not in every province, it probably will be soon. But Colin is going to walk us through kind of the logistics of the paperwork and the stupid little details, the stuff that's irritating next week. So in the meantime, get a hold of all these experts if you would like. And other than that, we will see you next week to continue part 2 of using RSPs to invest creatively in real estate. Thank you two so much for coming on. I'm going to have you come back another time.
Thank you.
Okay, take care, guys. And cheers, everyone. We'll see